Yesterday we talked about how the look of Count Orlok is going to be hidden until you sit down and watch the movie in December. Today we're going to go ahead and read more of the Entertainment Weekly article that goes on to talk a bit more about Lily Rose Depp and other aspects about the film, which I find interesting. So that's what we're about to do right now. So if you haven't watched the video where we discuss Count Orlok's look and its description as well as his voice, that's the video we did yesterday. Go watch that if you want. But this is the second part of the article in which they talk more about Depp and all of that. So let's hit that subscribe button, notification bell, 35,000 subscribers. Let's hit it before Thanksgiving. Come on, y'all. But let's talk about Robert Eggers talking about how he sort of was into Nosferatu always. So he talked yesterday in the video I talked about. He was talking about growing up in rural New Hampshire and going to the local library and reading these vampire books. And when he came across an image of Max Schreck, who originated the role of Count Orlok in F.W. Murnau's film, he said, "I thought that's the coolest thing I've ever seen." His mom then also apparently helped him order a VHS copy from a degraded 60mm print through the mail. And I talked about this yesterday where he says that it just had this very haunting atmosphere. It almost felt real. Now when you watch restorations, you can see all the makeup and the fake glued on hair and the bald cap. In the version I saw as a kid, that wasn't there. It had a kind of beauty and maybe, dare I say, authenticity to it. Eggers, as a teen, would later then adapt Nosferatu into a high school theater production, and then it was discovered and reproduced on a larger stage by Edwin Booth Theater in Dover. He then eventually became a filmmaker, and of course, this is the film that Eggers had been dreaming about, right? He's been trying to sort of bring Nosferatu ever since he was 9 years old, if you will, and I think that's such a great endeavor to finally see pay off. So, apparently in the past decade, of course, as you all know, Anya Taylor-Joy was supposed to be playing the role that we see Depp playing now, and at a point, that sounded amazing, right? But then, once I saw who Lily Rose Depp was, and I've seen some of her performances, particularly most recently The Idol. I know what you're gonna say, but The Idol, all its flaws, all its downs and outs, it still had some pretty solid material, and Lily Rose Depp was one of those particular people that really brought a lot to this show right here, which, by the way, I'm not saying it's amazing, but I am saying it was a little bit overhated. And we're just learning now as well that we were also going to have Nicholas Hoult play Frederick Harding, now being played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Skarsgård was actually going to play Hoult's role of Thomas for a bit. So I think that's an interesting aspect of this, how this all shifted around this one casting, and we would have had a completely different movie. I think even Harry Styles at a point was in here. I don't know what Styles was playing. But Depp remarks on the part of Ellen Hutter by saying, "I think it's intimidating, but with the knowledge that this has been his dream to make for forever comes the fuel to be like, I'm going to do everything I can to be worthy of that story." And I think honestly this just makes the film that much more grander. This is a passion decades in the making that Eggers has been trying to bring forth, and now with the amount of, I would say, critical acclaim and studio sort of having a great relationship with Eggers, it's pretty much going to be an amazing film, right? And from the first reactions we've seen, I think that is definitely something that's going to be interesting to see once we get this. So apparently there is a telepathic connection with Orlok and Ellen, and this is something that Depp talks about, that she had some really focused conversations with Eggers about maybe bringing this loneliness as well out and wanting to feel a companionship. She says there's a ghostliness to her, and pretty much goes on to, as much of a victim of 19th century society as she is a victim of the vampire. And this is her talking about the character of Anna Cording, who is a friend of Hutter's, who is married to Taylor Johnson's Frederick. She says, "Anna is a very earthly, good Christian woman who is raising her children and doing everything that Ellen feels that she should be doing. So to me, she's not only being plagued by this demon, she's also calling out to him. There's like a forbidden love there in a way." And I think it is such a timely piece, especially in our society right now. And I do want to get more into that once I see the film, now listening to Deb talk about it in this way. Robert Eggers goes on to talk as well about the vampire and the horror elements of the original Nosferatu and how that sort of has a dark gothic romance to it. He goes on to say, some people have said it's a love story, but I think it's darker and more twisted than that. It's very much a tale of obsession. Depp also describes it as being sort of a macabre love triangle between Orlok, Ellen, and Thomas. Although it involves so much more than that, she says, I always saw Ellen as someone who has one foot in the spirit world, if you will, and one on earth. She's desperately trying to cling to life in that sense. Orlok is a representation of death, and her husband is the representation of life. She's definitely torn between the two. And I think it's interesting too to hear about Holt playing the character here, because he's already been in another vampire film where he played actually the character of Renfield, which I think Renfield was a very decent movie. MCR song on it, I'm there. But he goes on to talk about this and says it's fun to explore the folklore and the text of it in different ways and in different styles, I suppose, and to see different interpretations of it. I'm probably done though now. 2 is probably enough, but never say never. Dafoe also talks about Nosferatu, who is also in the film and has been a long-time collaborator for Eggers, of course. As we know, they've been in 3 movies together now. He goes on to say about this, I know the original Nosferatu very well, but also I've dealt broadly with the vampire myth in other movies. It's a rich thing to work with. It's in this one where I function in the movie is very different, but broadly what really impressed me about the kind of sensual, obsessive love of this is that it's not always stress. This had a real sacrifice and obsession to it, and I liked very much my relationship to the understanding of what Lily Rose Depp's character must do, the kind of sacrifices she must make, her willingness and her understanding of it, and her passion for this force that she can't quite identify. Eggers also goes on to talk about the horrors of the movie, the jump scares and things like that, and says, doing Nosferatu, which is sort of invented horror movies, I had a responsibility to do some jump scares, which is something that I've been at times critical of, but I felt like you gotta do it here. If my son drops a Lego set, smashes it all over the floor, and makes a loud noise, I'm going to jump, but is that frightening? Is that what horror is about? No, but if the story is saying that the protagonist is leading up to something with tension that it shocks them in ways they weren't expecting, and it's earned because it's part of the story, then I think that's great. So apparently Skarsgård said he did have his own jump scare when he saw the sculpture for how Count Orlok would do, which was done by the same prosthetic makeup FX designer David White, who has worked with Eggers on The Northman and also Skarsgård on The Crow. He says, I was terrified just looking at the image. It looked so different from me, way more than Pennywise. I was worried that I couldn't perform through it, that it would feel like a giant prosthetic piece, and I couldn't come alive through that. 2 words, Grinch and Goblin, came to mind for Skarsgård apparently. He says he really felt that the Count had come alive though once he was seated in a chair and the full getup surrounded by candles. That was the first time where I felt the camera was alive and I could start becoming this thing. Robert came up to me after and he was like, there he is. So, I mean, what am I going to say, right? I'm excited beyond belief about this movie. This has been one of my most anticipated titles since it got announced, since Anya Taylor came on, since Harry Styles was there, and I am just so ready to finally see this movie next month. I am so pumped, so ready. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. What do you think about all of these things that have just been announced and talked about from the actors and all of them, the sensual vibe of it, the gothic part of it, as well as Eggers really relying more on jump scares in a way that feel warranted and not wanting to have them be cheapened, you know? I'm excited about everything I'm hearing and I'm ready for it. We'll be breaking down more of Nosferatu if it comes through, but stay tuned and check out our other videos that we have on the channel. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Follow us wherever you can, Instagram, all that good stuff. As always, stay safe, stay positive.